How well do you know your Starbucks coffee? Welcome, listeners. Today on Advanced Studio Classroom, we're going to be talking about coffee. We have an exciting article for you today, and I'm your host, Simon Stops. Joining me in the studio today are two panelists. First, we have...
Albert. Hello, everyone. Good to be here.
Welcome back, Albert. It's always good to have you on Advanced Studio Classroom. And I hear that there's a special reason you've been chosen for our show today.
That's correct. Many years ago, I used to work at Starbucks full-time for a full year during my college years.
So maybe not an expert, but someone who definitely knows his Starbucks stuff. On our panel today, we also have...
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda. And while I never worked at Starbucks, I certainly have drunk a lot of their coffee.
It's true. It's true. It's true. Today, we're talking about becoming a Starbucks coffee master, and that's a very interesting term, right? Usually when we say someone is a master, it means they're an expert at something. But in this case, we see coffee master has quotes around it, and there's a very special reason for that. What does coffee master mean at Starbucks, Albert?
Well, it's a title given to employees who have gone through an intensive training course to get to know the coffee beans that Starbucks uses, the source, which country it comes from, what it pairs well with, and throughout the time at Starbucks, they have constant updates with training, and also they visit stores and they teach other employees. So they have the title of Coffee Master, and you can know who is a Coffee Master by their black apron.
Black aprons. What is the normal color of apron at a
Green
Starbucks?
And red during Christmas season.
So there you go. Watch out for the black aprons. If you're in Starbucks, you'll be talking to a real coffee professional. Linda, have you ever met a coffee master?
Well, I'm thinking.
Going
I'll have
over
to keep my eye out for a black-aproned person at Starbucks and ask them questions.
That's right. So we're not actually talking about coffee masters specifically today. Instead, we're talking about a move that Starbucks has recently made. Can you tell us a little bit about what they've done, Linda?
Well, I think they're trying to make coffee masters out of all of us. They have a new app, and this is the app that actually coffee masters or people, baristas, which we're going to talk about in a minute, people that work at Starbucks use, and they are being given to us, the consumer, especially if you're a big consumer, and it's to help us choose the best kind of coffee that we like to drink.
So Starbucks obviously wants us drinking more coffee, and so they're interested in helping us all know what the best of the coffees are. Is that right?
Yeah, I feel like this is a very smart move by Starbucks. You know, it can make people appreciate coffee more, let them know the rich background, why this matters, between the differences between the next coffee bean and whatnot.
Okay. Well, listeners, why don't we get right into the article today? It's the article for July 9th, and you can join us by opening your Advanced magazine to page 18 as we get into the first reading.
Become a Starbucks coffee master. A new app to make you more apt to choose the best coffee. Starbucks is making a long-time employee status symbol. The Pocket Guide. It gives its baristas to help them learn the intricacies of coffee, available to customers worldwide in the form of an app. Starbucks brings its Barista Coffee Guide to the web. It's the Seattle-based coffee giant's latest bid to extend its coffee shop dominion, a way to draw in new, smartphone-toting customers and keep them tightly linked to the brand. It's part of Starbucks' strategy of premiumization, a buzzword beloved by the beverage industry that means encouraging mass-market consumers to trade up in quality and price. The printed guide, dubbed the Starbucks Coffee Passport, has been given to baristas since the early 1990s. It's a small booklet that describes the flavor and other features of the many types of coffee the company sells. During group coffee tastings, a common ritual at Starbucks, employees jot down their own observations in the pocket guide, which also acts as a log, and they get stamps representing the types of Java tasted.
I'll be honest, we're only halfway through reading this article, but already I'm wishing I had a cup of Starbucks coffee beside me. How do you two feel about that? I notice you don't have cups of coffee with you in the studio today.
I know, I really need one.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll be able to make it through the rest of this show, even though we don't have the caffeine. Right in that very first sentence, we start off with a bunch of interesting vocabulary. Starbucks is making a long-time employee status symbol, and then it continues on from there. Can you help us out with this word long time, Linda? Because usually it's two words, but here in this article, it's one word. What's going on there?
Well, if you use it in the sentence like, I have lived here a long time, then it's two separate words. But if I say, this is my longtime friend, then it becomes an adjective, and we put it together in one word.
So can we have a couple of example sentences then for our listeners, how you would use this as a one-word term? You would say, my longtime friend, right? Or you might say, my longtime coworker. Mm-hmm. What else might you say? This is my
Longtime. Well, for me, I mean, if you have like a comfort food that you always go to, this is my longtime. Rice is my longtime comfort food. You could say that.
I'm surprised. I thought it would be chocolate.
All right.
Well, I'm giving an example sentence and doesn't mean saying the truth.
All right. Well, there we go. This app is obviously something special, and we know it is special because it tells us it is a long-time status symbol for baristas. What is a status symbol?
Well, a status symbol is like a perceived, visible representation of like someone's social position or indicator of either like wealth or status.
Yeah, and so it's a way of showing your quality or the quality of something. And how did this happen? Well, obviously, it was the pocket guide given to baristas. And Linda, you mentioned baristas before. What exactly is a barista?
Well, I think we should give that question to Albert since he used to be a barista.
Were you a barista?
I was.
Oh, okay.
A barista, it's an Italian word, and it means bartender. Usually it means anyone that works at a coffee shop. They'll make your coffee. Hopefully they're knowledgeable in how to prepare the beans and how to pair it with foods. Yeah, so that's a barista.
Okay, so if this was a pocket guide for baristas, it basically means it's a book full of secret information that only employees get. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Okay, and now it has become available to customers worldwide. And in the next section, we get into a little bit about why Starbucks would want to give its secrets away. Can you tell us what is the next section talking about, Linda?
Well, Starbucks obviously wants to dominate the world with coffee. And that's just another way of explaining the first part of this sentence. It's talking about, I think we've introduced Starbucks before, and we've talked about coffee coming from Seattle, which is its hometown. And it said it's its latest bid to extend its coffee shop dominion. Okay, dominion is a great word here, just means control. And so they do have control in a lot of places. It's a very widely recognized symbol.
And it's interesting because you said they want to dominate, and that, of course, has the same root word as this word, dominion. So, moving on, basically what they're trying to do here is get what they call smartphone-toting customers to be tightly linked to the brand. What on earth is toting?
Toting is to carry.
It means carrying. Have you heard of a tote, either of you?
I have one.
Tell us about it.
A tote is a bag. Oh. It's another word, or a small kind of suitcase maybe. But smartphone toting customer, this is an adjective that's talking about people, customers, who carry their smartphones with them.
Yeah, and as I understand it, a tote is a bag you carry around with you all the time. So you're kind of dragging it around with you. And the idea then being that your smartphone toting people always have their phones with them. They're never without their phones. And that's probably why they've decided to go with an app as the way to deliver this. If we get into the next paragraph there, it uses another interesting word, but it's a very strange word, one you might not find in the dictionary. The word is premiumization. What on earth does that mean, Albert?
It means the procedure of making a product or brand become more superior and usually more expensive. So I feel like by giving this, pocket guide that was supposed to be a secret, they're trying to make it so like, hey, it's exclusivity. Come join the Starbucks experience and we'll sell you more coffee.
Right, and this word premiumization comes from the word premium. If something is a premium quality, it means top quality. And we notice that it's now a buzzword. So a buzzword is a word, about a particular subject that's very fashionable. So they're trying to make this word very fashionable in the beverage industry. So people, know the word and they associate premiumization with Starbucks.
Forgive us. It's a new word for us too, listeners. So just quickly then, premiumization is the process of making something premium, and it's a buzzword, so you probably won't hear it all the time, but you might hear it from time to time. But this still doesn't really answer the question for us. What is the benefit to Starbucks of having its customers bound more closely to the brand? How is that going to help Starbucks out?
Well, I feel like because on average, Starbucks coffee costs more than your run-of-the-mill coffee shops or donut shops, And so by telling the customers, like, hey, these are the reasons why, our coffee beans and our coffees are, it's just superior than other brands or other coffees. I feel like it makes customers feel like, oh, there is added value going to Starbucks and drinking.
So I think you're definitely right. That's definitely part of it. But I also think that Starbucks is really interested in having people move up in terms of the quality of the coffee they're buying. So if you have ever been in a Starbucks, listeners, you'll know that the coffee can be fairly expensive. And so when you're confronted with expensive coffee, you right away kind of want to buy the small one that is cheaper, right, to save money. But there are all these things at Starbucks that make that maybe not the best choice. So, for example, a bigger cup is only a little more money, and adding some kind of special flavoring is only a little more money. And so you can start with a very basic product, but very quickly you can move towards a much more premium, excellent product by adding a little more money, and that, of course, is good for Starbucks. In our next paragraph, then, we learn a little more about the printed guide, which, of course, is the non-app version of this pocket guide. It's the version that employees use, and it's called the Starbucks Coffee Passport. Albert, do you still have a copy of your Starbucks Coffee Passport?
You know what? I do. It is somewhere back at home in Los Angeles in a box in an attic. I keep it there not because, I don't use it or like it, but it's because it's for safekeeping. But there's no point anymore. Everyone's going to have a copy of this now.
Well, usually when you have a passport, you use it to get from one country to another country. Is this passport at all similar to that sort of passport?
That is very perceptive and insightful of you, Simon. So what happens is Starbucks employees are given the option to be trained to become a coffee master. And once a month, a coffee master will stop by the store, and employees can take time out of their day to learn about the different coffee that is offered during the season, or maybe there's a special going on or whatnot. And, they will be trained and even quizzed. And afterwards, if you pass, the Starbucks coffee master will put a little stamp on your passport. And when you fill up the passport, you can go and take an exam and become a coffee master.
Oh,
How many stars did you get?
Oh, let's not talk about that.
Does it actually look like a passport? Like, is it a similar size?
It is.
Look?
It's really fun. Each page is filled with really nice stock paper. The stamp itself is very intricate. It tries and takes you around the world because coffee is, the industry itself is a production that's done around the world.
So as we continue through this paragraph, we find out that this small booklet or passport describes the flavor and other features of the many kinds of coffee that Starbucks sells. Would you say any of that is kind of like special information? What, I guess really the question I'm asking here is, why would we as customers want this passport?
Well, I will say when I was using the passport, it was a very handy guide. It's done by coffee connoisseurs or experts that have taken the time and studied this, and they're at the peak of their game. And they break it down to why this coffee tastes different, what makes it special in terms of like soil, sun positioning, time of the year, and what it pairs well with.
You mean like how they grow the coffee, how that's special?
Yes, yeah. And I feel like all of this adds up to, hey, you go down to your local Starbucks and you can drink coffee, instantly transport you to another part of the globe, and you don't even have to leave your country.
That's why it's called a passport.
It is.
But wait a minute. Do you actually get to travel with this passport?
I think that's stretching it a touch.
You're not going anywhere. You're just drinking coffee from different places.
I think the other thing is the kind of soil that the plants are grown in. A couple of years ago, we did an article on Yunnan province and how they're starting to grow coffee there where they used to grow tea fields. And part of it is because of the kind of soil they have.
Right.
So it's all of those things combined.
Okay, so this is basically a book full of information that maybe can help you choose between different kinds of coffee. Lets you know more about the coffee you're drinking.
Right, and maybe to some end make you appreciate of the lengths that people go through, and Starbucks has all of these different coffees from around the world, and you can taste almost the tradition and culture of a place.
Okay, so Albert, you mentioned earlier that if you are a Starbucks employee, every now and then a coffee master will come to your shop and you have a chance to learn about the different coffees. And that's basically what they talk about in the next paragraph. They talk about coffee tastings being a common ritual. And I was wondering, Linda, if you could tell us a little more about what a ritual is.
A ritual is something that you commonly do, but there's like a ceremony that goes along with it. So, having never been invited to a coffee tasting at Starbucks, I wouldn't mind if Starbucks people are listening. It says here, so it's a common ritual at Starbucks and employees do something, and this is what happens during this period of time when they're tasting coffee.
Okay, so during this coffee tasting, which I assume is when all the employees sit around tasting tiny cups of different coffee, right? It tells us they jot down their own observations, and jot is a really interesting word. It's actually a very useful word because it really just means write quickly, like you're making quick notes on what they are experiencing in these different kinds of coffee. And so it says in that way, the passport acts as a log. And I was hoping one of you could explain log to us here because it's a different use. It's not a tree, right?
Well, they make it out of a tree because it's paper. Okay, a log, usually we use this word when we're talking about travel because when people travel, they often keep track of their days on their trips and what they did during that day. So they have a travel log. And here you can also bring it over to when they're tasting coffee, they're keeping track of the kind of coffee they drank and how they felt about it and what they tasted when they were drinking it. So they're keeping track of, their travel around the world through coffee.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, it's like a professional journal to track your coffee career.
It is. And speaking of jotting, I totally forgot about this part in the exercise, but employees would jot down what their thoughts are, and the coffee master would ask, hey, Kevin, what are your thoughts about this, right? And so this employee named Kevin would be like, well, this coffee tastes like dirt. And the coffee master was like, that's interesting. I won't say it's wrong, but, here at Starbucks, we like to call it earthy. So if you ever talk to customers, please don't represent our coffee and beans as though it tastes dirt-like, but say earthy instead.
Let's try not to get involved in any legal issues with Starbucks here. Let's not call their coffee dirt. We've spent a lot of time talking about the employee experience using this coffee passport. Let's get on to our next reading and find out about how these passports are going to improve the patron experience or the customer experience. So let's have our second reading now.
From baristas to patrons. Starbucks says the digital version was developed for its own employees, but now customers are also able to log in. The app is web-based and can be accessed via a mobile phone's browser at passport.starbucks.com. It contains a guide on how to appraise coffee, explaining features such as body, acidity, aroma, and flavor. It also offers walkthroughs for different brewing methods, from French press to iced pour-over, and lyrical descriptions of a wide array of coffees. How the app sings. For instance, it describes Starbucks' organic Yukon blend as big and balanced with a liveliness at the start and herbal depth in the finish. A fancier bag of single origin, small batch beans, the aged Sumatra, lot number 044, is said to have saddle leather aromas with a syrupy mouthfeel and flavors of butterscotch and maple.
Okay, and so at the beginning of this second reading, we basically find out about the history of the app. This app, of course, was developed by Starbucks for its own employees, but now customers are also able to log in, and that, of course, is a different use of the word log that Linda just explained to us. Linda, how is log in different from a piece of wood or from a professional journal?
Well, we're leaving the world of wood behind and we're going digitally. So this is a phrase that we use when we are going to use an app and we have to sign into the site. So the phrase is you log into the site.
That's right. So basically what that means is now not only employees can use this digital version, also customers can. And it goes on to tell us that the app is web-based, and so you have to log in at a website to use it. And where do you go to see this app, Albert?
It is at passport.starbucks.com.
That makes sense.
It does.
Sounds a little bit like an advertisement, but I promise it's not. You
made me
don't
say it a
have to go
second time.
visit this website if you don't want to, but feel free to do it. It tells us that if you go there to check out the passport, you get a guide on how to appraise coffee. Tell us about this word appraise, Albert.
Appraise is to examine someone or something in this case in order to judge their qualities. And I feel like this is so smart because like customers would check in or log in and they'd be like, oh, this coffee seems interesting. And they're going to go and order a cup and then they're going to compare and contrast.
And Albert, it's not that you're not doing a good job. It's just that this next sentence is actually the reason we have brought you here today. It's because they explain the different characteristics of the coffee. And though I am a native speaker, I have no idea what any of them mean. It lists 4 different characteristics. Linda, what are the 4 characteristics coffee has?
The body of the coffee, the acidity of the coffee, the aroma of the coffee, and the flavor of the coffee.
Okay, so some of those are fairly easy. You'll know what aroma is, right? It's the smell of the coffee or the way it smells. The flavor of the coffee is a pretty easy... Oh, I might be wrong about aroma. Linda, do you have something to add?
Well, it's the smell that you get when somebody steps onto the elevator holding a cup of coffee and everybody goes, oh, that smells so good.
Okay.
That is the aroma.
Ignore that part, listeners. The aroma is just a word for the smell of the coffee. The flavor of the coffee, of course, is how the coffee tastes. But this word acidity and this word body, what exactly do those mean when we're talking about coffee, Albert?
Well, the body of the coffee is how it feels in a taster's mouth. And I'm not making this up. It's just how it feels in your mouth.
So the feeling of the coffee, maybe like if it's thick or very watery, something like that? Is that what you mean? Okay.
I can tell the difference. There are some places I don't like some places coffee.
Maybe you are in the wrong job, Linda.
I
Maybe
don't like the coffee from
master.
some places
She is.
because it tastes, I mean, it's just, it tastes like you're drinking water.
Okay, fair enough. The acidity, though?
Acidity is just, some coffee are very acidic, sour, or bitter. It depends on...
So you can tell a coffee has a lot of acid in it when it's sour.
I guess,
Is that right?
For more common days, the pH level of how something is.
Okay.
And so can you look it up in the passport, the acidity level of a coffee?
Oh, yeah. It's a cheat guide for us. It's a cheat sheet guide.
So it's got everything.
It's
all
got
the
everything.
information.
The
So
knowledge
tomorrow,
of...
if I go to Starbucks, I can say how much acidity is in this coffee?
I hope they can answer you.
They'd have to
Okay,
pull out their
I'm
passport.
gonna
Nope.
try.
They're going to pull out their smartphones now.
Their smartphone. There you go. Okay, so heading into the next sentence, it tells us probably what the real advantage is, especially if you are a customer who is buying beans to prepare at home for yourself, because it tells us it offers a walkthrough for different brewing methods. And that term walkthrough is very interesting because, again, as with the first column where we saw that word long time, walkthrough is usually 2 words. So what are they talking about here? A walkthrough.
A walkthrough is a demonstration or explanation of details or a process of something. So it's not saying you're actually walking through something.
It's interesting, though, because often when we use the word walkthrough, we actually are talking about walking through something. So, for example, if you're preparing an event, you and the other event planners might actually walk through the different parts of the event before it happens. We also learn here from this paragraph that the passport gives you different ways to prepare coffee. And then it uses this very interesting term. It says the passport gives lyrical descriptions of a wide range of coffees. Linda, what are lyrical descriptions?
Well, it's a poem, a poetic way, or like a song way of describing something.
And that's why we see in the next subtitle there that the app sings. It says how the app sings. And so they're basically saying that the app gives us examples of these lyrical descriptions. And you can see that through the last couple of paragraphs here. For example, they say big balanced with liveliness at the start. Very fancy descriptions of the coffee.
And herbal depth at in the finish.
Oh, my favorite is saddle leather aromas.
I know. I was like, really? You feel like you're riding a horse?
And listeners, you're going to have to go to Starbucks if you want to find out what those things mean, because they're very complicated, and Albert wasn't a coffee master, just a barista.
No, you just had to.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us on Advanced Studio Classroom. We hope you'll join us again for another program. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.